The framework brings together our learnings from 5 years of partnering with a local family hub, formerly known as Sure Start, in a deprived area of Southampton. Our journey with communities started with recognising that research is a barrier for many. It's often confusing, and our role as PPIE leads is a very challenging role, as it sits in that space between researcher and people, between the systems world, which is all about processes, structures, requirements, and the life world, which is about lived experience, personal values, feelings. Our role is very much about connecting and translating, connecting researchers with the public and the public with researchers, and trying to make sense of research in order to try and make it make sense to others. We've been trying to remove these, or at the very least minimise the barriers. And one of these barriers is the traditional model of involvement, which doesn't really work for underserved communities, so requires a novel approach. We know we need to include underserved groups, but why? Well, because it ensures accurate representation. So what works for lots of different types of people and not just a few. Also, equity in healthcare. So when we include different types of people in our research, we can see if some groups have more health problems or get less help than others. And this shows if things are fair or if changes need to be made. It also ensures better data quality. So when we have a diversity of people in research, we get a lot more information that helps us understand things better. The NIHR Include Roadmap provides researchers with a really useful starting place for planning with work with underserved communities. However, it doesn't really show us how to do it, how to get started, and what it looks like in practice. And I noticed the road here is straight, but in reality, the road has bumps to navigate. Things like language and culture, literacy, community space, etiquette, different places and times to meet, different ways to meet, and to reimburse, and so on. And our journey with community has been about the how to connect with, how to involve, and how to co-produce with underserved communities in novel ways. And we've translated this into a framework to guide researchers. So let's look at this in more detail. So we have a database of over 90 public contributors. We've seen a huge growth over the past 6 years, where we've started with just 8 people registered with us. And these public contributors are matched with researchers in a more traditional approach. They will attend or join formal meetings in person or on Teams in an academic setting. They'll be sent information via email or in the post, and they might sit on a trial steering group committee or advisory board, and they'll be reimbursed and remunerated usually via a bank transfer. And we're very fortunate here to have formed a PPIE forum of 8 public contributors. Researchers will present their early project ideas for public involvement in order to strengthen their applications, and it won't cost them anything. The remuneration of members' time comes from our SPCR PPIE funds, and whilst this is a more novel approach, it's still traditional in terms of a formal setting. There's an expectation to give verbal comments and feedback. Forum members are sent information via email to review and consider beforehand, and these sorts of things could present barriers to people from underserved communities.
Sonia has shared with you the traditional approaches to public involvement within our framework, and now we'd like to introduce you to our community-based approaches. Under the umbrella of the Finding Out Together team, we've got 3 different strands to our community outreach work, all of which were built through an investment of time to build a foundation of trust. Time is such a precious commodity, especially in our busy working environments. So we need to think of this as a long-term investment. And when you do that, you set out with the knowledge that it is a long-term plan and the rewards might not always be immediate, but with consistency and with consistent nurturing, you will reap benefits in the long run. And this is precisely how we've developed this part of our framework. We know that research often requires urgency and quick turnaround times. And we also know and acknowledge that researchers and their projects, they come and go, but one thing that remains a constant is our communities and their community group. Investing our time into the community means that we've worked closely with the community groups and we've built a regular presence and we've become familiar faces, and we've demonstrated that our commitment is for the long haul. We've learned from these groups that they've had past experiences where researchers or third parties have collected information but didn't always come back and share the outcomes. We've also learned that a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work when it comes to communication. Therefore, through conversations with those who attend the group and community leaders, we adopt our approach to make research as accessible as possible, working with them to develop a plan outlining our promise to them. When a researcher has a concentrated piece of work which they're hoping to seek public contribution on, we facilitate a listening cafe. Listening cafes are held to connect our researchers to our community partners. They're held over 3 to 4 weeks in a safe and comfortable community setting which our community partners are used to. In each 2-hour session, there is food, craft activities and creative conversations. And the bonus of it is, because the group is already familiar with the Finding Out Together team, it means that researchers aren't going into this cold, which means it makes having important conversations about a specific research project more natural, honest, and productive. Researchers follow this up 6 to 12 months later in a final listening cafe to share with the group how their contributions shaped their research.
I quite enjoy research myself anyway, but I've always believed it's aimed at like academics, higher level people, old people. But I think with the Listening Cafe, the forum, and how the approach is very different, it's given people the opportunity to have a voice and feel heard, and to realise that the only way that you can make a difference is by being part of that, you know, and research, especially the research that around your children's health, around our own physical, mental health, things like that. It needs to come from the people that are affected. So I think that's really beneficial, and I really enjoy them. So. Definitely, and I think that obviously having other people's experiences and them having their input into things kind of makes it more exciting, more engaging, and it is, you know, makes me want to be involved a bit more, to be fair. And I think that a lot of the parents and the people that come along to these sessions, their opinion on research is changing. In all honesty, it's seeing the researchers' mindset and attitude changing. Like, you can almost see it in those sessions. It's like almost like a light bulb or something, and I feel that they change and adapt to the group and the setting and the people they're talking to. Empowering, fun, and very relevant.
Once we've established a familiar presence within the group that we're working with, we then go on to hold community forums. This is a monthly event which is the anchor within our community group. And each month we meet for 2 hours, where each session includes light refreshment, craft activities, and our conversations are very informal and loosely based around research. It gives us an opportunity to help our groups learn about research and how they can contribute. The forum is open for researchers to attend each month. It could be that researchers are looking to seek an opinion on an advert or light touch feedback about something, or maybe they want to prepare for a more focused listening cafe. To follow up each session, we send a newsletter summarising everything that we've covered and also sharing further opportunities for involvement. In addition to this, we have a WhatsApp group where we can communicate directly with our forum members.
Well, when I first went along, I was a little bit like, oh my God, what to expect? Like, I wasn't sure. Like, when you think about research, you think of like medical stuff, and it's not just about medical stuff. It's like about talking about your experience, and it's nice to actually have someone listen about your experience. Yeah, it has actually. Like, I would probably actually do more research, like projects, if I could. I find it so interesting, like, and it's also helping for the future. Like, my kids are quite young at the moment, and I'm trying to help their future. By doing this now, I'm helping their future. So. Being listened to, relaxed, and great food and atmosphere.
Often in research there are groups of people or populations that we just don't hear from, and I wanted to find new and exciting ways to really involve these people and make sure that their voices can be heard. One of the main things that the listening cafes offered is actually access to parents and families who don't typically take part in research, so able to involve them in different ways. It was brilliantly facilitated, and one of the fantastic things is that the family hubs were able to offer a creche, which made a huge difference in terms of how we were able to involve the parents. The craft was also amazing. It's something I would never have thought of, and it was a really novel way to break the ice, get everybody to be at ease, and really form a different type of relationship what you wouldn't typically in traditional public involvement. We were very much guided by the Finding Out Together team. They are brilliant and so experienced in running these listening cafes. I think we very much just followed their guidance in the planning. The listening cafes were brilliant for helping shape my research. It gave me an opportunity to get to know this amazing group of women who shared with me their stories, their lives, and it really helped me understand the context within which they live. Yes, absolutely. So we were able to speak to a group of people who we haven't been able to recruit in previous research despite our best efforts. So either through qualitative research, in trials, or as public contributors. So just hearing their perspective and giving these families a voice was really important, and definitely something I would want to do again in the future. I would say fun, eye-opening and unique.
We give back to the community in other ways through craft, food, or volunteering at events that they might have. We also have nominated our groups for awards from the University of Southampton, recognising the contributions that they've made. And we know from feedback from those who have attended the sessions that they also gain on a personal level, with transferable skills such as teamwork, collaboration, building their self-esteem, to making connections and friendships with others who have attended. If a contributor wishes to take part in opportunities that we've shared which are outside of our community outreach model, we work individually with our community partners to develop a working agreement which will then be provided to the research team that they'll be working with. The plan details communication needs, any reasonable adjustments, how they prefer to contribute, and any payment preferences such as for specific vouchers. To give you a hypothetical example of how this looks in practice, meet Carol. Carol told us that she doesn't feel comfortable meeting with researchers in a formal environment, and she'd much prefer to meet one-to-one in a coffee shop. Technology isn't Carol's thing, and she has made it clear that she isn't comfortable using Teams. Carol has told us that she finds it difficult to read lengthy text and that she often gets lost when it's trying to read it. Carol's told us that she prefers to be paid in supermarket vouchers, particularly Tesco. So all of this information allowed us to translate it into a working document which we could then share with the research team. And this would allow us to overcome the barriers that Carol would have in contributing in the future. And when this working document was then translated to the research team, this meant that we facilitated a meeting between Carol and a researcher in a local coffee shop. We advised the research team that Carol wouldn't be available for Teams meetings. We asked that any information that was sent out would be communicated in an easy read format. And we also asked for her to be reimbursed in supermarket vouchers for the supermarket of her choice.
The framework aligns with our own department strategy and also the new NIHR strategic commitments to public partnerships by offering alternative ways of engaging with underserved communities or connecting researchers with communities, offering other means of remuneration, for example, supermarket vouchers, and other places to meet, for example, coffee shops or community centres, providing feedback, updating on what happened next, and consulting with community groups.
We hope that by sharing this framework with you today, it gives you new ideas and insights to how you can involve the public in your work in future. Some best practices for inclusivity. First of all, we'd ask you to think about your purpose. What are your intentions outside of a funding requirement? What is motivating your involvement and engagement? And when you think about what is motivating you, this will help you work out what you need to do and how you're going to achieve it. The next thing we need you to consider is language. What makes sense to you won't always make sense to others. When you're thinking about working with the public, think about low literacy levels, neurodiversity, learning disabilities, or communities where English is a second language. Going back to trust, building trust and rapport is essential to breaking down barriers. Letting people know what happened next in your project communicates that you care and that you value input. And time. It takes time to build relationships. Be prepared to put in the time and not to focus on short-term gains for your project. A few tips to get started. Keep it simple, don't overthink it. Look at the existing networks that you have already and identify key people who you could speak to. For example, group leaders, managers, organisers, and arrange to meet with them. They know their own community members better than anyone else. And by having that first conversation, it's a great place to start. When you do go to meet community members, meet them in their community space, completely outside of the academic environment. Make it comfortable and familiar. Ask your group how would they like to be contacted and how would they like to be involved. Would they like to speak to us via WhatsApp, text, email? Would they prefer face-to-face meetings in a small group, a big group, or individually? Thinking about how they'd like to be paid, this is a very important consideration. So would they prefer to be paid by bank transfer or vouchers? And be prepared to handhold. What do they need from you and what do you need from them so that they can understand what you're doing to inform your project? Make sure that people know as much information as possible and leave the door open so that people feel comfortable to ask questions and to seek reassurance if they're unsure about anything.
Really interesting, an approach that I would absolutely like to take here in Bristol. I guess my main question, and I know there are lots of researchers and members of the public on here. My main question is how do you sustain it? Because obviously people have projects that start and finish. And in between all that, are you guys just holding meetings regardless of any projects that are going on? And how do you keep that going? Because you need the time and the money to do that. So that's my question. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, Alicia. Yes, that's absolutely true. It does require a lot of time, and there's no shortcuts around it really. And the time is what myself and Kate can give and have given, and that looks like going along to different groups on a weekly basis, being there as a presence, wearing our green Finding Out Together t-shirts so people get used to seeing us there, and they might say, well, why do you wear that green t-shirt, or what are you here for, and what does Finding Out Together mean? And so having that presence at the groups that the Family Hub runs is one of those things of building that presence up. And also another thing that we've done is we started to hot desk from their office. We asked them, would you mind? And they said no. They were quite intrigued. And we thought, actually, we're sort of putting ourselves in community with community, and that's where you hear what's going on. Your ears to the ground, you hear the conversations, you hear of events that you wouldn't normally hear about. Because really, when you're gone, they're not really going to be, you're not going to be on their radar. So you have to be a presence there, and, you know, so that they get really, oh, it's these people again. Oh, it's these people again. And then they start to remember you. Oh, these people are interested in, I'll let them know about this. So those are some of the ways. And for in terms of researchers, it means that Kate and I have been able to give that time to build bridges so that researchers who don't have the time to be able to build these long-term relationships, that they've been able to come through the gates that we've, you know, opened, as it were, through the relationships that we've built. It means that we're not going, but they can come, they can do their work with community, and they can go, but the relationships with us still continue. And that kind of addresses that feel of being used that the community members have said that they felt by researchers before. When they've come, they've got what they want, they've gone, and they've never told them what's happened next. So we've set this sort of model up to reduce and avoid those sorts of things, and to be able to keep those relationships going, but also to be realistic about researchers' time, because often it's very hand to mouth and there's lots of tight deadlines and all of that sort of thing, and we recognise that. So I suppose it's a bit of a partnership with community and a bit of a partnership with researchers.
Can I just add on to that as well, Alicia? So one thing that Sonia and I were keen to step away from is when we looked at all of the great public involvement work that was going on, there was so much that was going on in sharp bites. So you could see this great work that was happening, but then there didn't appear to be a continuation afterwards. So it was very important for us to create this anchor of the community forum so that we could sort of maintain our presence. And admittedly, when we set out doing it, we set out thinking, how are we going to fill these monthly forums up? And we created plans of what we could teach people and share with people. But actually, the reality is that after one or two sessions, the conversations became very organic, and it led to us seeking out opportunities for, you know, researchers to come and join our monthly forum so people could share feedback on an advert they'd created or something like that. So there's no funding as such for the monthly forum. That's something that we kind of provide the tea, coffee, biscuits, and things like that. Researchers the cost of a listening cafe into their budget. So I hope that adds a little something extra to what Sonia was saying.
Brilliant.
If I could just come on the back of that as well to say that so we started the community forum with this community. It was last summer. So actually that, if you think the work that we began with the community was in 2019, it had taken, a good few years of building those relationships before we were in a place to be able to have a community forum in their centre. And at first, they invited us to join their community forum. And then they said, actually, you can piggyback this group. And now they've said you can actually have your own standalone. So that for us is a real measure of their belief in what we're doing and their recognition that actually it's what we're bringing to the community and what we're doing by partnering with them is benefiting them and us. It's sort of benefiting all of us.
Thanks, Sonia. Thanks, Kate. Zoe, I'll come to you.
Hi, it sounds amazing what you've done. I wish there was something like that in Yorkshire where I am. I'm part of, well, sorry, I'm a sole researcher that's just got a grant on fibromyalgia, and you hinted that you had more like specific kind of sessions for certain things. I just wondered how you made sure they were diverse, because you can go to certain communities, can't you? But then that's not a diverse way of recruiting. And if you've only got so much resource to have maybe 5 people, I just wondered how you went about it, if you had a way of doing that.
Thank you, Zoe. Kate, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, so when we're talking about the Finding Out Together team, so the work that we've done with the Listening Cafe originally started off in one community, and we've perfected, well, we feel that we've perfected this within this community. And as it happens, it is a very diverse community within Southampton. Within the group, we've got ethnic diversity, neurodiversity, different age ranges. However, to make sure that we do include as many people as possible, we created this with the intention of being able to hold these sessions in any community setting, so long as we'd built up that rapport with the group to understand exactly what people's needs were. So when we would meet with a researcher going in the past and going forward, we'd ask them who it was that they were looking to speak to, and then we would liaise with the community group leaders and relay this information onto them. And the group leaders were a very key part in who it was that were recruited towards coming along to the Listening Cafe. Does that sound right to you, Sonia?
Yeah, absolutely. They were able to identify the people who would fit with the particular theme of the Listening Cafe, because they work very closely with the families who come along to the family hubs. So I would say definitely. And we're beginning to expand, like Kate said. We've got a great blueprint model that the community that we've been working with over these years has helped us to build. And we can take this model to other communities. And whilst we might need a different wrapper to adapt to the different communities we go to, essentially the principles of the model are the same, which is gathering together in community space and gathering together around food and informal conversation and craft. And we facilitate and support researchers to deliver sessions over sort of 3 or 4 weeks, as you saw in the video. And it's really an informal thing that we don't encourage any sort of slides or so it would be formal, or we're trying to remove the barriers, which is why the principle of having conversation around food, like the best conversations are had around the kitchen table. Well, if you don't eat at a kitchen table, it might be on your lap or at a coffee shop, but it generates the best conversations. And that's what we found. And that model is transferable to whatever the community. Like I say, it just might need a different wrapper. And we have been to a different community, a completely different community, and it worked as well there as it did in the community that we have been for a few years.
Thank you.
Thanks both. Maybe just following on from that a little bit, I guess I'm quite interested to know, because you presented these different approaches. So you were talking a little bit about the traditional approaches where a researcher might set up a public advisory group with, I don't know, a group of 4 people with lived experience, and they meet throughout the project. And then you presented your more kind of community focused ones. In your experience, how is this working in research projects? I'm just interested to know what the balance is between the traditional approach and these community approaches that you've been developing, and whether you had any examples of how maybe the combination of both have worked in a research project.
Are you happy for me, Sonia? So it's actually been quite amazing how researchers have embraced this. Even researchers, with years and years and years of experience are now coming to us. They're recognising the importance of seeking a diverse voice. For example, one of the researchers who did the mental distress, he had a panel of traditional public contributors, but had also used our community group to form part of his work. And they've just moved on to the second stage of their project, haven't they, Sonia? So definitely people can work in tandem. Something that we mentioned, having a community partner. So when someone who's been attending one of our groups or our forums, and they feel like they're able to then take us up on an offer of contributing in another way, in a more traditional way, so we're taking them out of the community, contributing in a more traditional way, that's where Sonia and we said the term hand-holding, and we were aware that that could sound a little bit patronising, but that isn't what we mean at all. What it means is we fully support people so that they can then take a seat at the table and get involved alongside those who are contributing to public involvement traditionally. And we support them to be able to do that. So I hope I've answered that and haven't gone around in circles.
I think one example I was thinking of is one of the staff, one of the leaders at the Family Hub. She used to be a parent who went along to the Family Hub. Then she became a volunteer. Then she became staff, and she came along to the Mental Distress Listening Cafe, and it was a bit of a light bulb moment where you saw her on the video, actually, Sarah, and she wanted to get involved in a project off the back of the Listening Cafe. And so I facilitated a meeting with herself and the researchers in Tesco Costa. She wasn't keen to go to join online meetings. She didn't feel comfortable going to meetings at the hospital or the university. So we had to think of ways to adapt in order to be able to make this whole experience and this process accessible for her. And that's really what we're wanting to do with other people that we're working with in community who wouldn't normally get involved. And traditionally we call people who get involved in research public contributors, and we wanted to slightly move away from that and call people who get involved from community partners, because we wanted to have we wanted that language to be a bit more of a partnership approach rather than a public contributor. When you're talking with people in communities about a public contributor, it is funny language to use, and they do sort of look a bit oddly as to say, what even is that? Whereas the word partner is a bit more, well, I kind of get what partner means. This means like, you're in this together, or you're working together, or you're looking at something together. So we've sort of tried to change the language a little bit to be much more partnership model. And yeah, so that's what we're doing, is that we facilitate meetings. We we help researchers to really understand what this person needs in order to be involved, in order to be able to feel that they can contribute, that they can be a part. Certain things might need to change to what is normally or traditionally done. And I think actually the researchers that we've been working with in these situations have been really understanding and welcoming and embracing of that, because they really want to hear from people who wouldn't normally get involved.
Thanks both. I'm just going to go to a question in the chat, which is, I think, a question around clarification. And do you have a number of forums in different communities, or is this the first and you've got plans for future forums?
Yeah, we have. This is the first, and it meets monthly, and we've been meeting since last July, so almost a year now. So monthly for a couple of hours a month. The listening cafes are to the demand of and the need of the researchers in our department. So if they're doing a project and they would like to use a listening cafe, we'll support them to be able to plan for that, and to plan how many weeks. We help them to cost it in their budgets as well, and we help them to deliver, and we facilitate that whole process as well. So they're more sort of ad hoc, but we're actually doing one at the moment on multiple long-term health conditions. But the forums, this is the first, and we wanted it to be, again, a bit of a trial, because we built up such a strong links and relationship with this community. It's been a real safe place for us to grow and develop and evolve our sort of finding out together work. But it's something that we would like to expand to other areas, isn't it, Kate?
Yeah, definitely. That is definitely our intention. And from the end of July, we are actually starting forums in a different group with a community group for asylum seekers in Southampton, run by Southampton City Council. So it's completely changing the way that we do things, but the principles, as Sonia said earlier, the principles remain the same. Building that continuity, trust, regular presence, with the intention of people being able to contribute to research going forwards.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from attendees? Sonia, a question for yourself.
It was just a little point, actually, I think off the back of what Zoe said, that it's a thought that I've had, that I've been thinking how many researchers might hear this and think, oh my goodness, well, we don't have that set up where we are, so how can we even get going and get started with the resources that we have? And like in the case of Zoe, if it's just herself, how realistically and practically can she do that? And I think that there are, like we shared on the last few slides, there are some key points here. And I think that, yes, the ideal setup would be to have something like a Me and Kate type, where we are the sort of connectors, the go-betweens, and so that researchers can be facilitated to connect with community. But if you are a sole researcher, or you don't have that sort of setup in your workplace, I think you can still use some of these principles for sure, of, connecting, making that contact with a community, and arranging to sort of meet with them in their place, have conversations with them. And I think that even if you can't continue to build the relationship with the whole of community, as long as you're building with, if it's that leader or manager or whoever, that you're basically keeping those lines of communication open. because, you know, we did sort of pull our hair out at some stages to sort of say, well, how can we spread ourselves so thinly and widely? Because there's only two of us. But I think it's about communication is key, and it's deciding who the important people are to enable you to access and connect with the rest of that community, and then just build with them. And as much as you always can, to have that sense of follow-up. So even if there are constraints to you being able to for the longevity of that relationship, to always feed back what's happened next. So they have that sense of closure, and they have that sense of actually what they have helped with has been meaningful.
Yeah, thanks, Sonia. I think that's really helpful to hear and quite reassuring as well. And it actually made me remember something that you had in the video about the different forms of reimbursement, because I do think funding is a massive barrier sometimes. And you've obviously come up with some innovative ways to, even if you don't have the financial aspect, you're giving back in other ways that seems to be that the community is very grateful for. And I don't know, would you mind us spending a little bit of time more just talking about the different ways that you have been reimbursing, outside of that kind of financial aspect?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm just thinking in terms of the families that we worked with, so in terms of families who come along to the listening cafes and forums, we don't reimburse them, because I think we covered in the presentation that there is they receive in different ways. So that would be having some dedicated time to themselves, being able to have some peer support and some learning and development, a sense of being able to contribute to something and make a difference, having free food and free craft, a free creche. So there's been lots of give back from that sense. But in terms of community partners being involved with a piece of project work, we've had the conversation with them as to how they would like to be reimbursed, and they're not so keen to be reimbursed through their bank account for a variety of reasons, and so they have been, we ask them how they'd like to be reimbursed and what vouchers they would prefer. In our department, the sort of voucher of choice tended to be Love to Shop. I don't know if that is true for many institutions, but this is a voucher that was not really preferred by the people that we're working with in community. So we were having to kind of just explain to researchers that what they need is this, because actually they've requested grocery supermarket vouchers because that's where their greatest need is, and that Love to Shop isn't really going to be much of a reimbursement for them because they're not going to be wanting to use it. So I think we've just been having conversations about that, and that seems to have gone down okay. Would you say, Kate?
Yeah, definitely. And something else that we have done, which we're really proud of actually, is it happened yesterday, but we had an award ceremony for the public community partners and staff of where we've been working, and that was a wonderful opportunity to say thank you and to give something back to this group, something that they could then share with their funders, because funding is very tight in community groups at the moment, to say, look what we've been doing. We're not just helping these people that come along to this group, we're contributing to the bigger picture. So it can be daunting, especially if you've got quite a small budget to work with. But you can be flexible and give back in other ways, and people are very, very receptive to that. So please don't be afraid to have those discussions, and certainly don't let it put you off, because there are always different ways in which you can give back.
Great, thanks, Faith. Are there any final questions? Just a question in the chat now. No, more of a comment actually. Working on a project with female veterans, utilised a public information group.
Can I add on to that, Natalie? Something that we have done and what we will do with each group is we create like a working agreement for every group that we work with. Because it is important, it needs to be individual to them, because as we said earlier, what works for one group isn't going to work for another group. And in all intents and purposes, it could be called a strategy, but we call it our promise to them, and it's co-produced with them, given a sense of ownership of what they expect from us and what they can expect from us, and it just outlines our intentions going forward. So I really like that you use that. That's a really powerful way of framing the identity of the group.
Yeah, there's so many good examples out there, and absolutely there's not one approach to this, but it's really nice to hear some of the different ways that you've been involving people in Southampton. Yeah, I'll open up for final questions if there are any. I think it's been a lot of food for thought, so it may be that we share your contact details afterwards, Sonia and Kate, if you don't mind. And yeah, I think someone will be sharing the video as well, so we can share a link to that afterwards. That's absolutely fine. But yeah, any final thoughts from you, Sonia, Kate?
No, just thank you so much for having us and giving us this platform to share what we've been doing. We have been living and breathing this and passionate about it for the last 5 years, and it's just wonderful to be able to share it and to have had such a lovely reception. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well said, Kate. Ditto. Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure to come and share.
Yeah, well, thank you both so much for your time and for sharing so honestly as well about what you've been doing and some of the challenges, as well as the highlights. It's nice to hear, some real life examples of what's going on. I'll follow up afterwards once we have the video up online and bits and pieces, and I'll share Kate and Sonia's contact details and a few links to some of the things that were mentioned in the videos as well, just so you have them for resources going forward. But really appreciate your time today. I hope it's been interesting and you've enjoyed it. And yeah, have a lovely day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.